Hello and welcome back to another episode of Christ Podcast, a show where we inspire the masses to become financially free while building God's kingdom. On the podcast today, we have Mr. Austin for the third time. If you haven't checked out the first two podcast episodes with him, talking about how to build a credit report, how to go about business funding with credit cards, um, you should definitely go and check it out. Today, we're going to talk about government contracts and the difference it can make having a government contract, with your business. Thank you for being here again for the third time, Mr.
Thank
Austin.
you for having me. I appreciate you bringing me on again. And I'm just so blessed to just have, as much knowledge and opportunity to learn so many things, hopefully, speak on certain things and hopefully inspire your audience, anyone that's watching it, um, to, to diverse their portfolio, to get out here and work and just show them something or tell them something that possibly could change their life, something that they didn't know.
That's great. That's great. I want to start with that. So, we did credit. We spoke about credit before. So, how important was education for you, being the fact that you're so very um, you well knowledge in all these different aspects, personal credit, business credit, and even today we're going to talk about government contract. How did you go about, educating yourself?
Um, Honestly, I didn't really go about educating myself. It's just things that happened in my life kind of brought me in full circle. And God's timing is perfect, and everything He does is divine. And you just got to trust that process. But ultimately, everything that occurred in my life has essentially prepared me to where I kind of am now. So, I mean, yeah, I was a smart kid in school at a 3.8. It wasn't nothing nothing crazy, but specifically as far as entrepreneurship, and just the ideals to continue to invest in myself and seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave, has just came from my parents. My parents have always taught me to listen, and they've been huge advocates of knowledge in my life, and they taught me many things that I understand people my age, having spoken to them, going to school with them, living in the same community as them, they don't have the same experiences and the same opportunity. But overall, specifically going into entrepreneurship, my dad lost his job, and kind of forced us as a family to think for ourselves and fend for ourselves financially. I evidently started a landscape business with me and my brothers. Long story short, we're using that money to kind of fuel us and keep the family going, while my dad was in between jobs or out of work, period. So after seeing what happened to them, I understood that I needed to be in a certain place in my life in order for that not to happen to me, and that I ultimately deserve better. My parents, they gave us a great life. I'm not saying they didn't do anything great, but there was certain instances in my life where I understood that this can't be me. How do I get here? Well, I need knowledge to get here and get here and get there. So, and then honestly, just the opportunity and just the ideals and being constantly instilled in me to constantly invest in myself. So I've always invested in courses, mentorships, podcasts. I've always done those types of things, because ultimately the best investment that you can make is in yourself, because without you, there wouldn't be the businesses that you create. Without Jeff Bezos, there's no Amazon. Without any of these people behind these companies, these companies aren't existing. So you're your greatest investment, and I was just fortunate to understand that at a young age, and it kind of forced me and coasted me into continuing to invest in myself via courses, podcasts, or whatever I came across via social media or my inclined research that I was able to find.
That's great. So that's my next question. Would you ever say there's there's too much you can? I mean, not too much. That's not the way I want to phrase the question. There has to be a limit in how much you can go about investing into these different courses. Being the fact that you can only learn so much and also apply so much. So is there like a line you draw in terms of, okay, this is the course I would take versus not this course? So you're not like having information is being recycled to you over and over.
Well, ultimately, people can say as much as they want on these courses, and in all of these avenues, but ultimately it's going to just come down to you doing the work because, ultimately you could talk about, and that's probably one of the biggest things in the community is just people just they say too much and they don't do enough. Like everybody wants to be successful, they want to be rich, they want to be well off, but no one really puts in the work to actually get towards that. So imagine if I got on this podcast and potentially gave you game that could change your life, but you did nothing in vain uh, for that information. You just basically just let it just sit there. And if you didn't act upon that information, then the information is useless. So ultimately, when it comes down to these courses, it's really just about what you can handle and also just putting in the small steps and doing the work. Setting goals for yourself, doing those sort of things ultimately are going to lead to the success in any course or any knowledge that you have. But in terms of knowledge, I mean, you should always continue to learn, and there's always a better way of doing things. There's always something you didn't know, or there's new ways, there's new technologies. Things are constantly evolving from crypto to stocks and all these different instances that you can continue to learn about. And it's just always knowledge, and you should always seek knowledge, as I mentioned earlier, from the cradle to the grave, because things are also always evolving, technologies advance, and there's never one right way to do things. But you'd be surprised what other people know and you don't. But ultimately, it's going to come down to you doing the work and you put in the time to eventually see results from the courses or books or podcasts that you're listening to.
That's 100%. The application's on you. People provide the resource, but it's definitely on you to apply it and take it yourself to the next level.
Right.
So that lets without much time spent, I guess just to recap on, so we know everybody can be up to pace. So before we can start talking about government contracting, what are the few things you need to have in place before you even start going about applying for things of that sort?
Well, ultimately, I kind of want to explain like what government contracting is for those that may not know, and kind of how I got into it, because I think that'll provide like a good basis and some relatability as people, because being in this space is intimidating. It's not easy, but it's definitely not the most difficult thing you ever do. It's not rocket science. The only thing that's rocket science is rocket science. But yeah, ultimately, government contracting is just basically supplying or selling things to the government that you would normally sell to people. So the largest buyer of goods and services is the government. People don't know that. So you got the public sector and you got the private sector. So most people deal in the private sector, meaning that you're dealing with your friends, families, consumers. But there's also another sector that people don't, that isn't advertised to us to work in, and the money that's allocated towards small businesses, and that's just the public sector. If you think about all these government-owned buildings, if you think about all of these entities within the government, the Department of Defense, the Department of Health and Human Services, Social Security Administration, if you think about all these offices and all the property and all the things the government manages, yeah, I don't know, especially for me, I just always wondered how do they do and work and do all these types of things. So the cemeteries, how do they maintain the cemeteries? How do they buy the food for the prisons? How do they get the shots and the vaccines? Like, how do they get all these types of things for these offices, for these people? As they go through small businesses. Small businesses fuel the economy, as we know from the pandemic, that without businesses and without you buying stuff, that the economy is basically, it goes to, it's gonna fail. So small businesses fuel the economy, they fuel the local economy. So spending billions of dollars on small businesses is keeping the dollar circulating, continuing to add revenue to businesses gives the government more reason to tax. They make more money, and it gives more opportunity to do other things to fuel the economy. So that's kind of like what government contracting is. It's just selling stuff to the government instead of selling stuff to your friends. And the main three sectors, if you think about a government, you got your local, you got your state, and you got your federal. So the federal government, that's over the whole United States. The local government, that might be like the Wayne counties or the Fulton counties or whatever county or municipality that's in your area. Those are like your local levels, and then your state levels: state of Michigan, state of Minnesota, state of Virginia. all these states procure different items and they buy things at different rates at different levels. So that's kind of like a breakdown of what government contracting is, and anybody can do it as long as you have a business, as long as you have a DUNS number, if you have all those things, your website, similar things that you would have if you were selling to somebody like your best friend. But you know, a few more things which I'll get into detail in a second. And kind of the story of kind of how I got into government contracting. So hey, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I'm always seeking knowledge from the cradle to the grave, and I believe I was on social media one day and I came across this podcast called Trucking Hustle. I don't know if you guys listen to it. Some may listen to it, but it is literally one of the greatest wealth podcasts, out there. I recommend. Shout out to Ramel Watley and Trucking Hustle and what he does. I commend him for it. But all the information on there is talk about trucking, credit, anything that you could, basically need. Not only in regards to trucking, but in regards to investment in different industries, he has pretty much laid out on the podcast. And I came across this podcast with a gentleman by the name of Global Leader. Shout out to Global Leader, or Hamza Sabri. 400 acres in a Maserati. He was speaking on government contracting, and it behooved me because I had never, it answered some of the questions that I had regarding who buys and who cuts the lawns and how all these things are managed. And everything that he said in that is basically gave me the fuel that I needed to learn about contracting. It gave me enough information that I can go out and research it on my own. So long story short, this is about last year, late 2019, going into early 2020 before the pandemic. I was learning about government contracting. I was doing the small steps. I got my cage code. I got registered exams. I did my capability statement. I was doing all those things that he was mentioning in the podcast, and then boom, the pandemic hit. So I was in contact with my procurement technical assistant officer. So procurement technical assistant centers are basically centers that are essentially supposed to help. They help, and then they're not the greatest, but they're supposed to help small businesses that are getting into the contracting space. They're supposed to give you an edge, a competitive edge. They're supposed to give you the resources and things that you need to eventually succeed in the space. So I was in contact with the Procurement Technical Assistance Center here in Michigan, over Detroit, which is Abby. And this is at the height of the pandemic. I was asking her about, different opportunities in the contracting space. I didn't really know what I wanted to sell to the government, whether it be like janitorial services or pens or whatever, because the government buys everything. I didn't know what I wanted to sell at that point, but she presented the opportunity of PPE, right? So she was saying that, at the beginning of the pandemic, masks, gloves, all these hand sanitizers. It was a global pandemic. Things were spreading really quick. People were scared. We needed PPE, and we needed it at a really accelerated rate. So the government, GSA, General Service Administration is just an entity within the government. And they are one of the largest purchasers, I think they are the largest purchaser of goods and services in the federal space in general. And they were sending out these surveys to the Procurement Technical Assistance Center officers to send out to local businesses to get these PPE supplies. So she sent one to me. I filled it out. Now, in all honesty, when I was filling it out, I didn't have any of that stuff that they were saying, but I had the faith in myself and in God that I could get all that information. So I always say, if you got faith in yourself, you're powerful, but if you got faith in yourself and in God, you're dangerous because there's essentially nothing that you could do. So I had the faith that I could get these items. So I was saying that I had 10,000 masks, 10,000 gloves. I had all this type of stuff that I didn't have. I was in my mom's basement. I had my computer, the same computer I got now, same computer I put my first bid in, or, won my first contract. Put in, finished the survey. A couple of days later, I got a call from the city of Southfield saying that they needed a quote on 10,000 masks and 10,000 surgical masks and I believe 500 KN95 masks, right? So I submitted in a quote for 80 cents a mask. And at that time, now, which might sound a little ridiculous now, but at that time, when the demand was up here, but the supply was down here, the government was pretty much willing to pay anything for it because these are, supplies that were essential for human life at the moment of the pandemic. So 80 cents at 10,000 masks is $8,000. So I essentially made $8,000 in a 15-minute phone call. And you're asking, well, how did you get the gloves or the mask or whatever? In all honesty, I think I was in some, I might have been in like some group chat or something. I can't remember how I got a hold of it. I think I found it on Facebook or something like that. Or it was in I was a part of some email chain for medical supplies. And I asked somebody in the group, did they have masks? And they didn't. One of my partners I deal with now, because of this, he reached out to me and said, yes, we do have, this mask. We're able to complete this order that you're quoting out for 10,000 masks, because I didn't have the mask. I'm just acting as a middleman between me and the government. They gave me a price of 14 cents per mask. And at that time, when I gave them the quote, I knew I could get it less than 80 cents, but I just didn't know where it's going to come from. So again, the faith aspect, I didn't know where I was going to get it. But long and behold, as I mentioned, 14 cents, that's what they came up with. They shipped me the product. I took it to the city of Southfield, and I completed my first government contract, I believe 5/21 last year. And there, I was awarded another one with the city of Southfield, and then another one with the city of Austin, in Austin, Texas, for personal protection equipment and supplies. Now, I don't consider myself a guru or anything like that, but I just want to bring awareness to people that look like me and people my age that this stuff out here exists. So, like, going back to your question, how can anybody get involved? So real quick, I'm gonna share my screen. Give me 1 second. Can you see my screen? You can see it?
Yes.
Okay. So really quick, before I even get into that, I want to just spit some facts to those who may be watching it, some stuff. This might be something that you first learned or something that you don't know, right? So less than 5% of businesses in the United States do business with the government. You don't hear people talking about on Facebook or Twitter, hey, go get the government contracting. Or you might see a couple of podcasts out there, like I said, Ramel Watley. There's a couple podcasts out there that talk about government contracting, but this is really a subject. It's an industry that government spends trillions of dollars in, or $1 trillion industry that pretty much nobody knows about. So as I mentioned, the U.S. government is the largest company in the world. They apply approximately $1 billion in new opportunity in the service sector of government contracting. They spend $1 trillion a year. And they're always increasing their budget based off, the fiscal year. They assign over 11 million contracts a year, and companies that are winning and awarded new contracts, about 95% of them are small or medium-sized business. So small business by SBA standards is anybody that has less than 49 employees and makes less than $25 million a year. So that defines a small business. So that's basically most of the businesses that we deal with every day, the mom and pop shops, the lash technicians, whatever businesses that are in your local area, e-commerce, pretty much fit under this threshold of opportunity. And 23% of the federal budget, which is over $1 billion, or over $1 trillion, I believe, has to be spent with small businesses. So like I said, anybody that falls under that threshold has the opportunity to make that type of money. Oh, excuse me. Now, it makes sense to do business, but you might be asking, why would you do business with the government? Well, if 23% or 20% of the federal budget has to be spent with small businesses, it only makes sense to do business with somebody who is required by FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, to do business with you, because they want to do business with small businesses. Small businesses fuel the local economy. Again, going back to my point earlier, they want to do business with you, but this is just, like I said, this is just something we don't know about, and we aren't told. We're told to go get a PPP loan. We're told to go certify for your unemployment, all those types of things. We're not really taught, and this industry isn't spoke about as much. So yeah, why not do business with somebody who has to legally do business with you? My friends, even though I sell medical supplies, everyone doesn't have to buy wheelchairs and all these things from me. They can go to Center. They can go to any other medical supply company and buy it from there. But the government has to spend this money with businesses that are like-minded, businesses that look like mine. So it makes sense to get involved in this space, no matter how big or how small your company is, because you're obligated to a certain amount of opportunity within this space. So that's pretty much some small facts about government contracting, and pretty much everything that you would need to start government contracting pretty much relies on this capability statement. So capability statement is basically is exactly how it says. It's a statement of your company's capability. So what is my company's Austin Logistics? So what is Austin Logistics able to do? What am I good at? What am I better at than other companies? You know, all those types of information. So pretty much, and this is how you will market your company in the federal space. Like now in the private sector, you have Facebook ads, you have all those types of things. In the public sector, you use your capability statement to advertise what your company does and what you're able to do. So your capability statement just simply consists of, you know, about a section talking about your company, your core competencies, so basically what you're good at, your certifications, you know, you want to mention those types of things. So whether you're women-owned small businesses, minority-owned small businesses, veteran-owned small business, those are types of certifications that you can get for your business. And then the differentiators are basically reasons that you're telling the government why you should do business with you versus doing business with someone else within your sector. So what solution are you providing? What solution are you giving them? You know, what innovation or what are you good at compared to other companies? You want to also include, you know, your point of contact, who you're able, you know, who's over the company, contracting officers over your company, you know, corporate data, where your company is located. You want your DUNS number, which is this number right here. So it's your 7-digit code that you can get on DUNS.com. And when you go and you apply for your DUNS number, make sure you click it's for government contracting, and it'll give it back to you the same day. And this is also a hack that you can use if you're just trying to get your DUNS number back the same day, because I think if you select U.S. business, it can take up to 2 weeks for you to get it back. But if you're saying you need it for government contracting, then you'll get it back the same day. So you can go to DUNS.com, get your DUNS number, and then your CAGE code. So your CAGE code is a 5-digit code that identifies your company in the federal workspace. So it's basically like a DUNS number, but it's for government contracting. So it's just a code that identifies who your company is, right? So you can get this when you register for SAMS. So this is SAMS. So SAMS stands for System for Award Management. Now, the System for Award Management, as I mentioned, there's 3 sectors to the government. So you got the federal, you got the state, and you got the local. So to register to do business with the federal, you go through SAMS.gov. And when you go through SAMS.gov, you're able to do, you know, as I mentioned, the federal opportunities. You can look at different opportunities, all the, you know, contract data. You can look at all that pertinent information on SAMS.gov website. And when you register here, it takes about 2 weeks to get your certification or your approval, and then they'll assign you a CAGE code to your company once you provide the needed documents that they need to assign the information. So to get your SAMS, you need to go to login.gov. And from here, you create your account for your business, and from there, you can sign up for SAMS to basically register your company to do federal work. Now, in the local and state level, so, you know, the city of Detroit, since I live here in Detroit, or like Wayne County, you can just do business or search vendor application for that city, state, or county that you want to do business in. So, for example, this is Virginia. So EVA is the procurement website that manages all of Virginia's procurement opportunities, right? So if you go to EVA.com, or if you go to register, or if you go to, if you want to be a vendor for anybody, for any state, county, and local, you just search vendor application, and then you just search whatever state or county that you want to do business. So EVA, like I said, for Virginia, I recommend Virginia for anybody that's starting out, because they have a lot more money allocated to them for spending. You got to think about the Department of Army, Department of Defense. A lot of their stuff is sanctioned off the coast in Virginia, so they have a lot more funding naturally. So their website is a bit more polished, and it's a little bit easier to navigate than like some other sites that you'll find as you're continuing to register in different states and counties. So yeah, to register in any state or county, just search vendor application for your city that you live in or your county that you live in, and register to do business. And the reason you want to do that and do business where you live, because local businesses want to give the business to businesses that are in that area, because you're fueling the local economy to give local jobs to local people. So that's good for the local economy. And there's more money actually in the state and local space than there is at the federal space. I think there's about 3 trillion in the local and state, and there's about 900 million federally. So budgeted to spend each year. So it's inclined that you definitely get involved with your local state municipalities. And like I said, you can just search your vendor application or registration to do business with that state, local, county that you're registered with. So going back to EVA, I'm gonna kind of give you a debrief on like all the different opportunities that you can kind of see. And this is kind of universal for what you'll see in the contracting space, the types of opportunities, the buying entities, and all those types of things. So from here, this is like their dashboard. When you make your account, they'll ask for your NAICS code, so your North America Industrialization Classification System. So this is a 5 to 6 digit code that basically identifies what your business does. So if you go to NAICS.com, and let's say, so I'll do it for you. So let's go to NAICS.com, and let's basically say you do freight brokerage. So you would go up here and you would search freight brokerage, and you would go through and make sure and find the description that basically fits what your company does. And from there, you get a 5-digit code, and that 5-digit code is used to identify what contracting opportunities are out there for your business. So from here, when you register in EVA or any of the systems, they'll ask for your NAICS codes or your SIC codes. And these codes basically identify the goods and services that your company does. And when those opportunities come about, they'll send you notifications to your email. So I'm interested in janitorial, food, stuff that you can buy from other vendors, not really any service work, pretty much anything that you can get. So they have like those opportunities like posted on their website that you can constantly get involved in. And here on the side, you can look at the different open, closed awards or solicitations that they have, and you can kind of cycle through them, filter them out, and see what you're competent in, what you're able to complete. Now, I always recommend that when you're doing contracts, you don't want to do anything that you can't do, because if you can't do it, you'll get yourself debarred or you'll get yourself in trouble with the government to the point where you'll never be able to do business with them. So I always recommend, because it'll be intimidating as you're going through, and you'll see multi-million-dollar opportunities, or you'll see opportunities for a lot of money, but you also want to be cognizant of, are you able to complete the work? It's easy to win a contract, but the work comes into actually fulfilling what you had to do. So even though I only had to call the city of Southfield and agree to that amount, I actually had to get the stuff and take it to them as I promised. So you want to make sure as you're going through these opportunities, you weed out which ones you're actually able and competent to do, so that you're not putting yourself or your position or your company in a bad position to get in trouble or get debarred and miss out on the opportunity for doing business with the government. So as I mentioned, you can filter out and go through all the different opportunities. So you can like filter out open and closed and look at what's been awarded or what's coming up. Here, they let you look at the different buying entities. So the different counties and cities that EVA manages, similar for other states and counties. So you got the Department of Transportation, all these local entities that manage the state's well-being and, over different things within the state or entity. You can look at that, you can filter them out by that. And then these are the different opportunity types that as you're procuring through the federal space that you will see. So invitation to bids are basically just your typical solicitations that you'll see. They're basically inviting companies to bid on these different opportunities. Requests for proposals. Now, these are a bit more um, descriptive than your invitation to bids. You know, it requires a little more paperwork, a little more, finesse to kind of to navigate through those opportunities, but they're usually more valuable than your IFTB, and they're a bit more descriptive as well. The request for quotes, they're requesting for quotes for different items. This could be for like mustard for prisons. This could be pretty much anything, that you can find. I mean, all these can, these apply to all of these different opportunity types. It's just the way that you fill them out may be different from each other. And the one thing that I like about EVA is they have what you call a quick quote, right? So this quick quote basically eliminates all the paperwork that you would have to do on like an invitation to bid or like an invitation for proposal or anything like that. So quick quote, you can just basically type in the numbers online, so that, through their bidding system, and you can just type in all the information that you need to know regarding what they're looking for. So it could be for toilet paper, whatever. So these are like all the quick quote opportunities that you can basically click on and fill out within minutes, as long as you're within, as long as you know what you're doing, essentially, as quickly as you can do it. And these are like the different categories. So the different supply types, the different set-asides. So as you're fine, with government contracting, and in regards to empowerment of certain groups within the government contracting space, there's certain pools of money that are set aside for certain types of people. For example, so there's a certain set aside for women-owned small businesses. There's a certain set aside for minority-owned small businesses that you can basically get involved in and give yourself more opportunity to win. So getting your certification doesn't necessarily mean you win a contract, but it just gives you access to other opportunities that other companies couldn't get opportunities for. So like, for example, if it's a minority-owned set-aside, then that means they want to spend the money or give the contract to somebody who's a minority-owned business. So that just might give you the edge you need to possibly win a solicitation. So that's what that is. And to get a certification, there's many types. You can go on the SBA's website, or you can kind of search the applications for your state, county, or local municipalities, what they require to get those certain certifications. So that kind of sums up the federal, state, and local level. So kind of going back to the capability statement, I know hopefully I'm not all over the place. So that's what you need in regards to your NAICS codes and your CAGE code, and how that stuff identifies what you do on your capability statement. And then your past performance, and this might be something that might intimidate a lot of folks, coming into the contracting space. They might ask, well, if I want to do business with the government, but I've never done business with the government, how would they want to do business with me? And necessarily that doesn't mean you can't win contract because you don't have past performance with the government, because I didn't have past performance with the government. They just want to know, what performance have you had, period. This could have been with a private company. This could have been with them. It doesn't matter. They just want to know, who have you done business with? Who are your credible sources? Who are your references that we can refer to make sure that you're a credible vendor? So this can be like a business you deal with. This could be anything. So, for example, right? So let's say I was doing trucking, right? But I never done any business in the federal space, but I was doing business with, private entities, private shippers, private brokers. I can list that under my capabilities, or I can list that under my past performance to show that I'm competent in the field that I am in. So yeah, that's pretty much what your past performance is, and this is pretty much snapshot of what your capability statement is. So your core competency, so what your company does, your niche, and you want to make sure that when you're getting into the space that you keep your laser focus on one thing, because I will say, especially for me, when I was getting started, I was all over the place. I was doing IKEA furniture, I was doing all these different types of things, but when I focused in on medical supplies, I found the opportunities to be, cumbersome, because I knew that space. I was able to complete the opportunities quicker. I had the connections. I knew the pricing. And so I was more efficient. So you don't want to spread yourself too thin when you're coming into the space. Not saying that when you start and when you get the hang of it, you can venture out and do other things. But when you're starting out, it's just key to have a laser focus on what one thing your company does well and sticking to that and advertising that to the government. So the core competencies, that's what that is, your differentiators, what your company does different, your point of contact, who you are, who's over the company, the CEO, corporate data, where you're located, you know, your DUNS number, your cage code, you want to have that listed, past performance, so what you've done in the past, and then your next codes. And that basically, like I said, is just the marketing component that you'll use when you're going to different events for contracting, or when you're connecting with different contracting officers, or when you're doing all these different things. This is what you'll use as a first step to get your foot in the door for giving yourself opportunity. So that's that. So as I mentioned earlier, the FAR, if you're wondering how is all of this stuff regulated within the government space, how does this work? What is the laws and the clauses that back everything that I'm saying up? It's called the FAR. So the Federal Acquisition Regulation, it's laws and clauses that mandate government contracting. You can get this for free. Acquisition.gov is about 2,000 pages. And you can basically access this at one time, get an understanding of the laws and the different subparts, and the different contracting vehicles, and all the information that you would need pertaining to a bid, how they purchase, what you're liable for, what they're liable for, what you can expect, how things are managed. You can basically find here in the FAR, and like I say, acquisition.gov. It's completely free, and you can access that. You can access that there. So yeah, this is Sam's. This is another tool that you can use to find out what the government spends and how often they spend. So I know earlier I mentioned, I'm kind of all over the place, but I just don't want to forget anything. Really, as I mentioned, the government spends trillions of dollars a year. But people want to know, and you want to know how often they spend the money, where they spend the money, how they spend the money, so that you know what industries and what people to target for your goods and services. So for example, if you sell weapons, or if you sell janitorial services, or you sell janitorial supplies, you need to know what buying entity within the government buys whatever that you sell, right? So if you buy like I said, if you sell weapons, right? You think the Department of Defense or the Department of Army, those are probably the sectors that you would go find and go research how to do business with, and market your company to them, to essentially market your goods and services. So if you go on USA Spending, you can basically look at all that I just mentioned. You can look at how much they spend, where they spend, who's winning the contracts, where they're winning the contracts. And as you can see right here, the federal government has spent $3.1 trillion in response to COVID-19. So this is just really in a few short months, they spent trillions of dollars in response to COVID-19. So this just shows the type of opportunity and how lucrative this space really is. So USAspending.gov, again, is where you can go to find all the information on how much the government spends, where they spend it, and how you can get a hold of all that information. And then before I get into this, what else? I know I said a lot. Did you go over? Did you want to go over anything that I said to make sure the audience they got that or anything?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions. I know you went over like the bidding website, where people can look into bid and see what kind of contracts are out there. But my question goes about, how do you go about bidding? How do you go about setting your price in terms of, I guess you don't want to seem like it's too expensive, but at the same time, you also make sure you're making a profit, if that makes sense. So how do you recommend people should go about bidding?
So I will say long-term, bidding is not really a stable way to do business with, to essentially survive in this market space, because you can put out 100 bids and only win like 2 or 3 of them. You want to You want to create opportunity from yourself by marketing and going to events to
Oh, I
do
just lost
business.
you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, you just went in and out. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Sorry, yeah. So as I was saying, bidding is not something that's gonna be a long-term, sufficing um, thing for your business because like I said, you can put in 100 bids and only win like one or two of them, and those might come few far in between. It might be months and spans apart for you to get those opportunities. So you wanna you we want to use the government as a customer. So getting out of bidding, as you're starting to get into it, that's how you want to get into it to understand the dynamics of government contracting. But long term, as you get the hang of it, you want to steer away towards doing that. And you may ask, well, what this looks like. Well, this looks like, um, partnering with other companies, subcontracting other under prime contractors, looking for different long-term contracts with the government. For example, mass award MAS contracts or multiple award schedule contracts with GSA are like 5 to 20-year contracts that you can get. Of course, there's stipulations and there's a decent amount of paperwork that goes into that, but there's certain strategies and things that you can use to long term make sure that you survive in the space in regards to bidding. So that I would say for bidding, when you're getting into it, it's good, but you long term don't want to think in that mindset. But in regards to your pricing, um, you got to understand the government's been buying this stuff for years. They've been buying this stuff for hundreds of years, so they know how much all of this stuff costs. So when you're pricing your stuff out, depending on it can depend on the type of year or the quarter or whatever it pertains to as to what your pricing is. But it's just essentially how much you would charge, how much you think your services are worth in the space after doing research. For example, right? So and I recommend this when you're doing anything that you do research on your competitors. So the way that you can do research on your competitors in the federal or just in contracting space is you can ask for what you call a bid tabulation report. So at the end of each solicitation, there is a tabulation report of basically everybody who's bidded on it and what prices that they set it at, right? So you can ask for this report, look at your competitors, see what they're charging, and then based off that, you can get an idea of what your services or what these products are going for. And then from there, you can gauge your profit or you can gauge how much you should charge. Now, to get cheaper pricing on items, there's certain strategies that you can do, wholesale. It's just identifying what your company does is probably the biggest thing. So if you're doing services, your pricing obviously going to differentiate versus if you're doing products. And then, based on the type of contract, you got to factor in, discounts and, tiered pricing. So it just kind of depends on what you do, what your company does as to how you should start pricing it out. And then, in regards to what you should price it out, a good way to start is looking at what other people are charging, what relationships you can build to either get those prices cheaper or something along those lines. But that's pretty much how you would gauge how much you would charge. And that's what usually I would recommend. So starting at the bid tabulation and seeing how much, usually a good, profit margin is maybe 20 to 30, 10, 15 to 30% over, depending on the quarter, quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four, of what to charge for your products or services that you provide. But it ultimately comes down to the amount of work, what they're requiring, what your company does, and as a business owner, you should understand what these prices look like. But in terms of the contracting space, a good way to start is looking at the bid tabulation report to see what other people are charging and seeing if you can match that price or if you go cheaper or whatever to determine your profit and things of that nature.
All right, all right. So my other question, I have a lot of questions in regards to this. Um, I guess my first question is this a profitable business for everybody, being the fact that, government contracting, we spoke mostly, I mean, I guess since you do have, like, you're in the truck industry, and your niche is medical. So how can someone, like, let's say, for example, is there any opportunities for people in the media, food type of things to get contracts from the government? And on the second part to the question, I think you kind of answered already in terms of, I guess my question in the second part would be, what would you recommend? What type of contract would you recommend in terms of length? Would you recommend people to go for when they started? Should it be a short, like 2 years, 3 years, 6 months? And so I hope that two questions make sense.
Okay, yeah. So I'll tackle that question first. So whatever you can get is the best contract that you can. Whatever you can manage is the best contract you can get. The long term, the better. Though that's the more security and more revenue that you can look forward to for you and your business. So some might be. So for example, if you do like a RFQ, it can depend. It might just be a one time order, or it might be a multiple scheduled order that you might price out through a 2 or 3 year period. It could just depend, and you have to read those contract terms as you're going through and filling out these different solicitations. And excuse me, answering the question, should everybody do this? Yes, everybody should do this. Why? As I mentioned, why would you not do business with somebody who has to do business with you? You just heard me say I made $5,000-$6,000 in 15 minutes. Where can you make $5,000 or $6,000 in 15 minutes without having maybe like a freak skill, like you being an athlete or anything like being a rapper or something like, what I'm saying? Like that type of opportunity and money, it's really nowhere that you can really find it. And there's a reason no one's talking about this, because, companies that have been doing this for hundreds of years understand this, and they want to deter you from doing this stuff. They want to scare you. They want, what I'm saying? They'll tell things to you and intimidate you so that you don't get a hold of this opportunity. So should everybody do it? Yes. And in regards to the opportunity, they award everything. There's nothing, and I'll show you right now. So this is right now what I have pulled up. This is U.S. Department of Defense. So within the federal space, as I mentioned, there's different agencies. So you got Department of Defense, Department of Army, Department of Navy. You got all these different buying entities, agencies within the government contracting federal space, right? So all of this stuff, by the Freedom Reporting Act, all of this stuff is legal, free information that they have to give out and that you can find online, right? So these are basically all the contracts. This is for yesterday, because yesterday was August 9th, 2021. As you can see, August 9th, 2021. This is not like last year. This is yesterday. Today's list is going to come out at 5 o'clock. It comes out at 5 o'clock every day. But this is basically all of the contracts that the Department of Defense, this is just the Department of Defense, awarded out yesterday or whatever day that you choose, right? So you can kind of see, and I'll read this one to you. So Madoni Odin was awarded a $129 million firm fixed contract for construction along South San Francisco Bay Shoreline. So you can kind of look through and see what it holds, and the contracting number, the activity, and but yeah, yes, there's opportunity for everything. The government buys yoga services. The government buys pencils, pens, condoms, shoes, feminine pads, socks, landscaping, snow removal, trucking, medical, equipment, computers, shoelaces, pants, shirts. I can go on. They buy, it's not nothing that they don't buy, because you got to think about all the schools, the counties, the fire department, the EMS, all of these entities that are under the government that rely on federal spending for them to operate. So they have to, like I said, they have to go to small business to get it, because that's what fuels the economy, to get the money, or to keep the dollars circulating within the community, and so that they can continue to make money. So these are just some for construction. If you read through them, 57 million. These are all yesterday. These aren't last year. These are yesterday, August 9th, 2021. $22 million for control, dispenser, decoy, counter measurements, integrated multi-platform launch controls. So these are for weapons. That's Department of Army. The United States has heavy regard for how much money they spend on the Army, the weapons, the advancements, the technology, the ships, all those types of things. Somebody has to fix them when they break, and somebody has to build them. Somebody has to maintain them. So they go to local businesses, your Boeings, all these multi-billion-dollar companies. They get most of their money from the federal government, and they don't tell you that. But actually, I believe what company is that by the airport? Which Enterprise gets 51% of their company's revenue comes from the government. They're a rental car company.
Jeez.
You think that they're making a lot of money from you? No, they're making even more money renting their cars out to the government or whatever goods and services they sell to the government. So the government space, the federal contracting space is where you want to be. And there's room enough and there's enough money for everybody. But again, these are the things that aren't voiced in our community. And they tell you to go get your PPP loan, make sure you're certified, make sure you go get your COVID shot. They'll tell you all these types of things, but they won't voice, hey, there's a contracting event for small businesses next week that you can, they won't tell you these types of things. And it tells you what type of state we live in. So, or just country.
That's good. So that is my next question. Being the fact, you spoke about in terms of bidding, that you want to get away from bidding, and I'm going more into like basically having relationships, with the government. So, you have that consistent income, you're not having to worry. How have you how have you done that basically, build a relationship with the government, or just different, or partner with different people so you definitely have income coming into your business on a regular basis?
Well, you got to understand, in the federal contracting space, there's not a lot of people doing the work initially, right? So there's about 5% of U.S. businesses that participate in the space. So the government is going to want to do business with people that they know have a credible source and that they can get the work done, right? So you'll see a lot of sources sought or a lot of sole source contracts being awarded out. So sole source contract is basically a contract that is awarded. So there's no bidding, there's nothing. The government goes to Austin Logistics and say, hey, Austin Logistics, you've been doing business for 4 years. You've done great work, and we know you do trucking. So we're going to award you this $10 million contract for trucking for the next 4 years because we know you can do the work. And so here's a sole source contract. So there's an exclusivity to it because they want to do business with people that they know can get the work done. And then what was the other question you said?
How do you go out partnering with people?
So in regards to partnering with people, when you introduce this idea of government contract and a source of revenue, and you provide, people like to in general, what can you do for them? Everybody wants to say, oh, okay, you do this and you do that, okay, great, but ultimately it's going to come down to, well, what money can you make me? And in the contracting space, having expertise in that, being not saying I'm a guru or a goat or anything like that. I'm still learning. I consider myself an amateur, if that, and at the same time, I'm not going to doubt what I know, but and all to say, I'm not an expert at what I do, but I offer value to companies that may not be experienced in this contracting space. So I'm able to build relationships with companies that, see me on solicitations, go to my website, or however I advertise, or companies that reach out to me, or companies that I know are in the space. I'll reach out to them for certain opportunities. So for example, right? So like McKesson, they're a really large medical supplier in the federal contracting space. So I'll reach out to them for like a distributorship account or a supplier account to where I can access their supplies and sell them or resell them back to the government at a 20-30% rate for profit for me and my company, right? So you can build these relationships if you have the opportunity, if you have all the work and the accolades to back up what you're saying and what you're doing, the money that you're making. people, like I said, people want to know what you're going to do for them. So if I partner with you, well, what is this going to do for my business? Well, give me distributorship of your company, McKesson. I could possibly, I'm another source or another large customer, possibly for your business by, buying your stuff and reselling it to the government in millions of quantities in bulk. So, um, yeah, you just gotta exploit the opportunity and just get the opportunity, and I guarantee the people that you will need for it will come. Because when I got the city of Southfield, I didn't even have the relationships, but because I had that opportunity, I was able to easily find a company that will partner with me to fulfill the order or whatever. So really just seek the opportunity. And honestly, like I said, people will come to you when they see you're doing, um, when you're experienced um, and we have expertise, they'll reach out for help or partnership. You'll find a lot of people coming to your doorstep because people want to go where the money's at. So if you're making money, why would nobody want to be a part of that? So they'll come to you, or as the opportunities persist, they'll be easy to get the partnerships.
That's great. That's great. So do you have any can you recommend some conferences that you've been to that you were able to network? I know you spoke about that a little bit earlier in this podcast.
You said conferences?
Events that you go to, yeah, conferences or events that you go to build this networking.
Yep. So what you can do is you can go to what you call vendor outreach sessions. So I've been to like the Department of Health and Human Services. I've been to a few here in Detroit. I've been to a few and a couple like virtual ones for like, some prime contractors like Blue Cross, or there's a one that's actually coming up for BMW. They're having like a supplier event as well. But you can basically find these opportunities on like Eventbrite, or you can find them by just searching them, or the entity. So this is where the research thing comes into play. So, when you're using USA Spinning, you're using these different tools. It's good when you get a hold of that information, and you know what entities buy what you sell. Then you can reach out to those entities or those agencies and go to those events. So, for example, I do medical supplies, so it makes sense to do business with the Department of Human Health. So what you can do is basically just search vendor outreach sessions or networking sessions with that agency, and they'll usually give you an Eventbrite invitation, or you can reach out to a procurement officer or someone on the site to inquire about different opportunities that they have for vendors to network with contracting officers or other businesses possibly within the field that you work in. So you can just really just search vendor outreach session for any industry that you're in, or like I said, identify the agency that buys what you sell or what you do, and then registering for those vendor outreach sessions that they might have individually to network businesses with local contracting officers, and just contracting officers in general that work out of that office or that agency.
Not a problem. Not a problem. So then next question I want to ask, I'm sure people want to know too, if you don't mind sharing. What is the largest contract you've been awarded, and I guess if you can go into detail like the time and what exactly would you be doing, if you can go into details, a little bit of details in terms of that.
So I will say the largest contract I've been awarded was while I was in school. It's with the city of Austin. It was for 6 figures. So I got awarded a 6-figure contract with the city of Austin to supply PPE to the city of Austin for medical. At the height of the pandemic, this is the items that they need. I found my niche, which was medical supplies. After I went to the city of Southfield, I just decided to stay in PPE because I'm like, well, I have the connections and all that. So I just went after opportunities that were in PPE and fulfilled those opportunities. So that's a 6-figure, close to 7-figure contract that I got with them, and I have until next year. Next April. So it don't matter how many contracts you do, one contract can change your life because it could be a contract for 10 million, it could be a contract for 10,000, 100,000, don't matter. The number, the opportunities to present themselves, they're plentiful. Like I said, they spend trillions of dollars, so um, the money's out here. So, like I said, one contract can change your life. You'll be surprised what you can accomplish and what you get by just applying the small steps. Shout out to global leaders, small steps towards the big goal every day.
And that's great. That's definitely great. And definitely congrats to getting that government contract to supply the PPP mask. Definitely. And congrats for graduating college. You say you graduated just recently, so congrats to that also.
Yeah, I graduate. I graduate this upcoming summer. I'll have a bachelor's in architecture.
That's great. That's great. So that leads me to my next question. So where do you see yourself in 5 years in terms of government contract and your logistic company? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
So definitely, I want to get some more experience under my belt. But ultimately, I want to be a global, contractor. I've only explored United States contracting opportunities, but you got to understand there's all these continents, all these other countries that use the same similar system to procure items and goods for their states, countries, and respective territories. So I definitely see my company being a global contracting offices, specializing in logistics and distribution. But I also want to offer opportunities for smaller to partner with smaller businesses or provide mentorship to smaller businesses that want to get into the contracting space, and then also partnering with companies to win them contracts as well. Um, but yeah, you'll definitely hear from me in the next 5 years. We're gonna be global for sure.
That's good. Do you have like, I guess, being fact that you're very young, do you have like a number of contract you're trying to win or a number in terms of monetary that you're trying to win in terms of, yeah, just in terms of being the fact you even want to go global? I don't know how these numbers work, but I don't know if there's like a certain amount of contract you have, then you're like, okay, that's it. I did something and I call it a quit, or you're just gonna do it as long as you can.
Really, for me, I more so value. You learn this in business. When you're passionate about something, when you're passionate about helping people. It sounds cliche, but the money, it's gonna come, but it's not the most important thing. For me, it's about um, helping others that look like me, that are my age or older or younger. Um, you know, be a pedestal uh, in this space or just in general, to understand that these things are possible and that you can accomplish anything that you want. So overall, um, I don't necessarily have a number. Uh, I just want to help as many people, as many businesses as I can along the way of the success of my company. So really, it's just impact, helping people. It's probably whether it be one person, one company, you know, or 100 or 10,000 or whatever. As many companies or people or entities or whoever I can along the way of the success of ultimately my company. So
Definitely income, impact over income, definitely something I definitely agree with that. So being that said, I definitely want to say, thank you for your time. It was definitely an opportunity to learn about government contracting. I'm definitely going to do research more on my to see how I can also benefit. And also, I hope those who are listening, you guys definitely take this opportunity and use this knowledge, do more research, and go and apply it. Because there's no point in having the knowledge and not applying it. And so, being that said, I don't know, if Mr. Austin, you can have any closing words, any word of wisdom for those who are listening.
um, going back to what I said earlier, If you have faith in yourself, you're powerful. But if you got your faith in self and in God, you're dangerous. There's nothing you can't do. So I will say that anything that you come across, whether it be government contracting, whether it be, whatever, it's not going to be easy. But long term, you just got to look towards the road ahead, stay in your lane, and understand that everything that's going to happen to you in your entrepreneurship journey, or just your journey in general, is going to happen for a reason, and you have to go through those things um, for you to ultimately be the person that you become. A lot of people wonder why I'm not a millionaire yet, or why I'm not this yet, but you got to understand that you have to go through certain trials and tribulations to understand what it's like, and you don't make those mistakes while you have that type of money, while you have that type of power, and that you demonstrate certain character traits um, that's required of somebody with that power and that magnitude. So everything that's happening right now, you just understand that it's due season. The rain's got to stop eventually, um, but it's for a reason. And the best thing that I can say is have an open mind, and just understand it is for a reason, and always seek the positive in anything that you do, whether it's good or bad. And seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Don't ever think you're too good to learn, you're too smart, or just because you might be a guru or whatever, that no one can teach you anything. Even though, like I said, I've been blessed with all this knowledge and all this opportunity. I don't by any way advertise myself as the end all be all one stop shop for anything, because things are always evolving, things are always changing, um, and there's always better ways to do things. Um, and people have different, they can offer different skills, different invoices, and different insights to different topics and different opportunities. Everybody's experienced certain things differently, and everybody learns differently. So everybody can offer, um, different skill sets and different opportunities that others might not. So, and also, I would just say, just do it. If there's something that you want to do, um, just do it. A lot of people get caught up in the things got to be perfect, or things got to look this way, or things got to be this way. Um, you got to understand that it doesn't matter when, where, how. It just matters that you start whatever that you want to do, because ultimately, if you don't start, or without you not starting to where you have to start, you might not experience certain things, and it might lead to detrimental effects to you and your business later on in the future. So the process, it's a wonderful thing. Enjoy it. Seek knowledge. Believe in yourself and in God. um, those are basically the ideals. And then, just put in the work, and put your head down, focus on you, stop caring what other people think. um, do what's best for you and in the best interest of you, yourself, and your community. Those are the ideals that I live by, and I've lived by, and will continue to live by, and it's led me this far. So that's what I would say to anybody that's out there that's as young as me, looks like me, or just in general. So
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you very much. And like I said earlier, I hope those who are listening definitely apply. And if you haven't yet, I mean, not if you haven't, but I just launched it. My investing guide basically is a how to on how to get started in the stock market. You can get it on wealthandchristbrand.com, wealthandchristbrand.com, where you can go and download it, and you can learn how to you can learn how to start making money in the stock market. You can learn all the different tips that you need to learn. And just like Mr. Austin said, you just want to do it. This book is literally everything I know in terms of how to get in the stock market, my journey, my experience so far. It's short, so definitely please use this resource, use this podcast, this episode to help you reach this goal of financial freedom. And stay tuned for next week's episode.